So hi, everyone. I'm Doreen Tannenbaum, the Strategic Initiatives and Communications Manager for UCI's Procurement Services. Welcome to our Department Buyer training session. I'd like to go to the next slide, please. So if you haven't registered already, we actually have our 2022 Supplier Showcase back on. You can register on that bit.ly link. I'll also place it in the chat in a minute. It will be on Wednesday, September 7th at the Student Center Ballroom. And from 11 o'clock to 1:30, we have vendors attending, there's networking, lunch will be provided, and there are raffle prizes. Next slide, please. So our procurement training guides are available on our procurement website, and they can be accessed at the top of our website. Right there, it says in the circle around the training. All of our past training sessions are also included on that site. So please take a look. There are some updates to some of the policies you might have missed earlier training sessions. We have previously recorded sessions and slides on there. And as always, they're always sent out after our meetings. Next slide, please. And in addition to our guides and our micro learnings on our website, you can always request a one-on-one session conducted via Zoom for more personalized experience with Shauna Neiswanger, and you can email her at shauna.n@uci.edu. Next slide, please. I'd like to turn it over to Snehal Bhatt. Thanks, everyone.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for taking the time from your busy schedules to come and attend this training sessions. My name is Snehal Bhatt. I'm the Chief Procurement Officer for the UCI campus, and we look forward to your attentive, paying good attention to this session. This is actually a change in the process, and so there's going to be a lot of questions being asked about change management or the process and things like that. So I want to start off by upfront saying that we actually are adding a little bit of a burden on everybody in the departments to do something that they are probably not accustomed to doing or they have not been doing in the past. And I will explain the reasons why we are doing that. So this session is about the federal fund purchase requirements, the uniform guidance that actually requires certain things to be done when there is any purchase on federal funds has been in effect actually starting July 1, 2018. We just have been trying to take care of everything ourselves at the Central Procurement Office. But what we are realizing is that by the time it comes to us, it is rather too late for us to do some of the checks that we are supposed to perform to make sure that the supplier is not debarred from doing any business. And so, we realize that this is something that should be done upfront when the supplier is selected. And so that is why we are moving this process farther up in the requisition process. And we are going to provide you with the training on how to go about conducting this debarment and anti-lobby verification checks. Shauna will go over the SAM.gov registration and the search, and we will also be talking about other forms that are available if a supplier is not found in SAM.gov. So we'll talk about that as well. Of course, as always, we'll be providing you with all the links that you can look at and get more understanding of it. And then we'll be able to spare some time answering any questions you may have, which I would suspect you will if you are not familiar with purchases on federal funds. So we actually have a slide on some frequently asked questions that we anticipate you wanting to know. And so we already have pre-planned some of those questions, but we'll be more than happy to answer any other questions you may have. Okay. So before we get into any of the trainings, this is a slide that those of you who have been attending this training session on a regular basis should be familiar with. But I want to make sure that I reiterate and remind everybody that every individual that is a UCI employee actually has a responsibility and is required to comply with all the procurement rules, regulations, policies, procedures, and laws. Here are just some of the high-level policies that we all are expected to adhere to and be familiar with. If you are going to be doing a lot of purchasing and procurement on a regular basis, I strongly recommend for you to, whenever you have some time, go through some of these policies and try to get an understanding. The California Public Contracts Code is a very, very long document. You don't need to spend your time going through that. The only thing you have to remember there is that there is a threshold of $100,000 above which we have to conduct competitive bidding for the sake of giving opportunity to everybody in California to be able to gain our business. The particular one training that we are going to talk about today complies with uniform guidance, which is the 5th on this list, which is what we are going to talk about today. And hopefully by now we are familiar with the Small Business First policy and the covered services requirements to comply with Article 5 of the Collective Bargaining Agreement and Policy 5402, that's a region's policy. One other thing that I want to reemphasize is that the delegated authority for signing any contracts, order forms, or any form of agreement with any supplier actually is delegated to the procurement office. So I'm going to kind of please request everybody not to have your department sign any agreements with suppliers. I'm still finding a lot of departments and PIs and department administrators signing agreements on behalf of UCI, and that is not essentially a binding contract. So I am going to urge all of you to please continue to encourage your staff and faculty to not sign any contracts on behalf of UCI and work through the procurement office for you to be able to do that. Okay. I've also noticed that a lot of departments tend to get their services or products before a purchase order is approved, which is also not in compliance with the policies. So please ensure that a purchase order is in place before you actually purchase a product, and not the other way around. Those are some of the things that we are continuing to find, and we would like that to not happen. So we will appreciate your support and help in making it happen. Okay, going to the next slide. Okay, so here's the meat of the whole thing. Debarment and anti-lobby requirements. So what is debarment? Essentially, debarment or a suspension is something that an organization has been identified by the federal government where we are not expected to perform or do any business with this particular company. So essentially, we are excluded from conducting business with this company. There are different thresholds established depending on whether it is. Okay. So depending on whether it is on federal grants or federal contracts. So there are different thresholds, and we'll show you a table that will tell you those thresholds. There's also different thresholds for anti-lobby verification, and we'll share those as well. Because, as I mentioned, the debarment should be conducted on the supplier at the time when the department selects or chooses a supplier to do business with. And that is the reason why we are moving this process up front. What has been happening in the past is that the departments decide who they want to use, they submit a requisition, it turns into a purchase unapproved PO. When we get it and we start looking at it, we are now initiating the process of identifying a supplier and finding out if they are debarred or not. At this stage, it is rather too late because the decision's already been made to use the particular supplier. And if they end up being debarred, we have to trace everything back and start all over again. And there could have been a lot of time and energy wasted in that process. So this is something that the departments will now have to start doing going forward. This will also help streamline some of the processes, because if you have already conducted these checks and uploaded the documents in your acquisitions, when it comes to us to approve the PO, this process will be a lot faster and we'll be able to approve the POs without having to spend time doing some of these checks at the back end. Okay. There is a site that the federal government has created where they are keeping a track of all the suppliers that have been put on debarred list, and that is called sam.gov. And that's what we will explain to you as to how do you register at sam.gov, how do you go about finding the suppliers, and how do you upload the findings from that search. With that, I would like to now turn it over to the team that actually is going to do the presentation. Oh, before I do that, this is the slide that I was talking about, where I said that there are different thresholds set up for different types of verifications that need to be performed. So as you can see here, for all federally funded transactions over $10,000, there is a federal fund checklist that's been created by UCOP that we should be filling out, which actually kind of has information about the fund that you're going to be using and some other details that we will explain. The source selection and price reasonableness form was something that you hope that you all are already doing, because that's something that we have put in place for quite some time, since July of 18. That also happens for anything over 10,000. The debarment and anti-lobby verification should be done on all. The debarment is technically written in the Uniform Guidance Manual to be done on all orders, no matter what the dollar threshold is. But that is actually a very tall order, because we do have significant amount of purchases that we make that are very small dollar purchases, but they are on federal grants. And so the auditors, the ONR auditors, have audited Santa Barbara, and when Santa Barbara asked them, they said that as long as you do all the debarment over $10,000, for send over $10,000, they will accept it and it will not be an issue. So in order to reduce the administrative burden for us to do this check for anything less than $10,000, we are also essentially asking everybody to conduct this debarment verification for all federal grants and cooperative agreements for spend over $10,000. Okay. The threshold for contracts, federal contracts, is $35,000. And the anti-lobby verification for federal grants and cooperative agreements is $10,000, whereas the threshold for federal contracts is $150,000. So those are the most commonly used verifications that we need to perform. Now, of course, if the spend is over $250,000, there is the small business solicitation documentation required, and anything over $750,000 has those additional requirements for current cost or pricing data and the change order requirement, which doesn't happen very often. So we're not going to spend too much time on that. But the ones that are over $10,000 on federal grants or contract and $35,000 or more on federal contracts is something that we want you all to start paying attention to. Okay. Having said that, I think this is probably my last slide to present. If you go to the next slide. Yep. Okay, so I'm going to turn this now over to the Strategic Initiatives and Communications team. And here are the members of the team. You already got introduced by Doreen. Shauna Neswanger is going to be also presenting the sam.gov. And Lauren's going to talk about the debarment verification form. And of course, Lily also is on the team that helps with all the sustainability programs.
All right, thank you, Snehal. I'm going to go ahead and first go briefly over the federal funds checklist. As Snehal mentioned, that threshold slide is a guide, but this can also help you. So if you wanted to start off with your federal funds checklist when needed, I want to point out and many other types of procurement activities. I know that with being the administrator and putting things into KFS, it is a true collaboration between you and your colleagues to find out some of this information. So we ask that you work with your team on any questions that you don't know, and we're always here to help as well. So at the top of the document, it's pretty standard with the name, date, and requisition or PO number, total amount. And you should at this point know what the total amount's going to be, but we always get questions, well, what if I don't know exactly what it's going to turn out to be? Well, go ahead and give the best estimate here as a last resort. But also you would go ahead and fill out the fund number and the award number. So that's where you might need to work with either your finance person or contracts and grants to find out what that prime or sponsor award number is for the federal fund. You can also click on detail of the fund information and gather some more detail there. In section 1, you're going to go ahead and just go ahead and click the appropriate. So if sole source and price reasonableness was not needed, so let's say, as Snehal mentioned, this debarment check is only needed for underneath 100%, but you'd want to make sure that anything over 10,000 has this sole source. So you want to go ahead and use that as your guide, that you've got that done as well. And then you'd go ahead and select what type of award it is. And here it guides you that if it's a grant or a cooperative agreement, you're going to go ahead and stay in this section 2 on this page. And if it is a contract, you'd go to the 3rd section and fill that out. And then also you'd want to go ahead and fill out if it's a federal flow through account or a grant or a contract. And the same things apply. You go to either section 2 or section 3. So right below here, we have part of the page shown. In section 2, let's say it was one of those grants or cooperative agreements, you'd want to go ahead and fill out all the checklists that apply. Now, please note, we've got it stated here that the first section, all the articles, are covered under our UC terms and conditions. So you can go ahead and check that off. And then here's where your guide comes in. You're always going to need the debarment check. So you'd want to go ahead and use that as a guide to click that when that's done. And then also, if anti-lobbying or any other requirements for the threshold amounts are needed, then you go ahead and select those check marks appropriately. Next slide, please.
Right. So, Shauna, thank you. So let me just interject and let everybody know, like, I don't know how many of you have experienced this, but in the past, up until now, it has always been that the things come to us, our department then starts looking at things, and they are now at time of approving the PO, going back and trying to ask all these questions and trying to get all these answers. So there's a lot of back and forth via emails to get all this information. And ultimately, we don't know this information. We have to go back to the departments for all the information. And so this is going to save a lot of time in back and forth via emails to get the information. So this is where we are asking the departments who should know this information to actually fill in this information and provide it to us when you submit the requisition.
Thank you, Snehal. Yes, so this second page is showing you section 2, page 2, where you would fill it out if it was in the case of a contract, federal contract. So you just go through the check marks again, and then also use this, as Snehal said, as your guide to all the additional paperwork that might be needed based off the threshold. All right. And now I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Lauren to go over sam.gov and going over how to get into the site and also perform the debarment check.
Thank you, Shauna. So what is sam.gov? Sam.gov is the official federal website, and there's no cost to use sam.gov, but it allows you access to review entity information for all organizations that have registered in sam.gov and agreed to FAR. But primarily, we're going to be using sam.gov to search for entity registration and exclusion, but it does perform a host of other functions. Next slide, please. So when you're creating an account in sam.gov, you have to have an account in order to conduct the searches we're asking for debarment. So we're going to go over how to create the account. And first, you're going to go to sam.gov, and then in the right-hand corner at the top, there is a sign in button. So you'll click that. Next slide. And then you'll go to create an account. Next slide, please. After you click that, you'll be asked to provide your email address, choose your preferred language, and then accept the rules of use. Next slide. And then after you've completed all of those steps, they will send you an email. And in that email, they'll ask you to confirm email address, and then you'll be prompted to create your password. After creating your password, you're going to choose your multi-factor authentication method. So some of the options include face or touch unlock, security key, authentication application, voice message, or backup code. Next slide. So after that, you will have completed your sam.gov account. And then now we have a video actually from sam.gov on how to conduct searches in the site. Helen, I believe we have to share the sound.
Partnerships, individuals, and U.S. federal government agencies. An entity can be any organization or individual that bids on contracts or applies for grants and loans. An entity can also refer to a party that has been suspended or debarred, is covered by a prohibition or restriction, or is otherwise excluded from doing business with the government. Entities can obtain an entity registration in sam.gov, get a unique entity ID, or be subject to exclusions. Let's look at how to search entities in sam.gov. First, sign in. While you can search and view some things without signing in, searching for entities requires you to be signed into your sam.gov account. From the home page, there are 3 ways to begin your search. You can select Search in the menu bar, or you can select the Entity Information domain link, or you can use the search bar located below the domain links. Selecting the search link in the menu bar will take you to this search page. Note that when you select the search link from the menu, the search page will be set to all domains. To search for just entities, select the plus sign next to all domains, then select the Entity Information domain, and then select Entities. Next, use the filters or enter a keyword to search for an entity. If you know the entity's name or unique entity ID, use the entity filter and enter it there. When you enter an entity name or unique entity ID, a menu appears below the field where you can select an entity that matches. If you do not see an entity that you are looking for, then try entering your information into the keywords box. You can use the other filters to view entities by purpose of registration, entity type, socioeconomic status, product or service information, where you can filter by NAICS or product service codes, registrations with debt subject to offset, location, or entity status. Filters help to narrow your search results. They work like an AND operator with your other search options. So if you use keywords and select 2 filter values, your search results will contain your keywords and match both of your filters. Let's go back to the home page and look at the other ways to search entities. Select the Entity Information domain link. This will take you to the Entity Information landing page. You can launch a search by selecting the type of entity information you want to search from the drop-down menu, and then enter a keyword or number in the search bar. This page also has links to help with using entity information on SAM.gov. Once you enter your keyword or number in the search bar and select the search icon, your search results are displayed, and you can see your keyword displayed here below the keyword search. You can add more keywords or activate filters here to refine your search. Back at the SAM.gov homepage, the third way you can search entities is to use the search bar below the domain links. Select entity information from the dropdown, enter keywords or a number, and select the search icon. The search bar on the homepage will launch a search of all entity information, not just entities. This means your search may include exclusions or disaster response registry records. If you want to view only entities, select entities from the domain picker, and your search results will update to show just entity records. To view an entity's record, select the title from the search results. Entity registration records will display an entity's core data and other information depending on the type of registration. Entities that only have a unique entity ID assigned and are not registered will display only basic entity information. Thank you for watching this video on how to search for entities.
Okay, so hopefully that video was helpful, and we have linked that so you guys can refer to it moving forward. We've also provided additional tips for how to search in SAM.gov. Sometimes the vendor's name may not appear immediately. Therefore, some of the ways that we find more exact results is locate organization's commercial and government entity code. And that's also referred to as the cage code. So you'll see in the picture, that's one of the ways in which you can search for a vendor. And the way you would find an entity's cage code is just type into your search browser, name of the organization and cage code. So usually it'll be one of the top results, and it's about, it's a 5-character number, and then you'll highlight that and then put it in the search bar, and it should give you an exact result for your the entity you're looking for. Next slide, please. Also, it helps to cross-reference with KFS the address for the business that you're looking for, because sometimes there may be a business with multiple entries. Therefore, using the KFS address to verify which one is the most accurate is helpful. And also to know, you probably saw in the video, there's no longer a done domain if you all were ever used that in the past. So it may take a little bit longer to find the exact entity that you're looking for, but hopefully these tips we've provided will help you find exact results. Next slide. And then we have another video from SAM.gov on conducting debarment searches.
In this video, you will learn how to search exclusions on SAM.gov. An exclusion is a suspension or debarment of an individual or entity that is prohibited, restricted, or otherwise excluded from doing business with the federal government. Federal awarding officials check SAM.gov to see if an exclusion exists for an entity. If an entity or any of its principals are subject to an active exclusion, it means that the entity is currently ineligible for federal awards by any federal agency. Only active exclusions are publicly searchable. If no exclusion record is found for an entity or an individual, then there is no active exclusion. Only federal users can view inactive exclusions. You do not need to sign into SAM.gov to search and view active exclusions. However, many helpful functions like saving a search, downloading, or following an item will require you to be signed into your account. From the home page, there are two ways you can begin your exclusion search. You can select Search in the menu bar, or you can select the Entity Information domain link. Selecting the search link in the menu bar will take you to this search page. Note that when you select the search link from the menu, the search page will be set to all domains. To search for just exclusions, select the plus sign next to all domains, then select the Entity Information domain, then select Exclusions. Next, use the filters or enter a keyword to search for an exclusion. If you know the entity name or unique entity ID, use the excluded entity filter and enter it there. When you enter an entity name or unique entity ID, a menu appears below the field where you can select an entity that matches. If you don't see the entity that you are looking for, try entering your information into the keywords box. If you are searching for an individual person, use the excluded individual filter and enter their name. If you are searching by social security number or tax ID number, you must include the individual's name with the number. You can use the other filters to view exclusions by classification, federal organizations, exclusions type, exclusion program, location, and dates. Filters help to narrow your search results. They work like an AND operator with your other search options. So if you use the keywords and select to filter values, your search results will contain your keywords and match both of your filters. Note that if you are only searching for a particular classification, for example, firm, you are potentially excluding results classified under a different category. Let's go back to the home page and look at the other way to search exclusions. Select the Entity Information domain link. This will take you to the Entity Information landing page. You can launch a search by selecting exclusions from the drop-down menu, and then enter a keyword or number into the search bar. Once you enter your keyword or number in the search bar and select the search icon, your search results are displayed, and you can see your keyword displayed here below the keyword search box. You can add more keywords or activate filters here to refine your search. To view an exclusions record, select the title from the search results. This record will show you the excluding agency or agencies, the details of the exclusions, and additional information. Thank you for watching this video on how to search for entity exclusion. You will learn how to search exclusions on
Thank you. And so hopefully that provided some more insight on how to conduct the debarment searches. Now we're going to go into your process for uploading the information to the requisition. So after completing the entity search, you're going to click entity up at the top right of the profile. Next slide, please. And then, so before you choose the vendor that you're going to move forward with, you're going to check the exclusions tab on the left-hand side that appears once you're inside of the entity's profile. And then in this section, after you click that, there's a menu, and you'll see the active exclusions or inactive exclusions. So if there are any active exclusions, that means the entity cannot be used. Therefore, you probably go back and start a new search. However, if there are no active exclusions, move forward and to download the profile. So you'll click download at the top right, and then you'll be able to download a PDF version of the profile. And then after that, you press download again. And then this is the visual of the PDF. And then you'll see once again, it says no active exclusion records. So this PDF will then be attached to the requisition.
All right, thank you so much, Lauren. In addition to what Lauren said, we already went over the federal funds checklist, but also I just wanted to mention that any other backups such as federal funds checklist, the debarment, and the SSPR form or any other forms that might be needed should be uploaded to the requisition. But here, let's say after all your searching, they're not inactive, or they're inactive, or you can't find them at all. Doesn't mean they're debarred if they're inactive. It just means you can't find them. So, or they don't have an active entity profile. So, meaning they've lapsed in letting and updating the site to let the system go through the process of verifying their information. So, in that case, what we want to do is send out the debarment verification form. And this is pretty straightforward and easy. You go ahead and fill out the top portion for the vendor. You put the supplier name, reference what order you're working on, and then go ahead and just fill out the top box under A. But then you would go ahead and send that off to the supplier, and they'll fill out all these checklists here. Next page, please. And I apologize. Let's see here. Okay. And then if anti-lobby certification is a requirement as well, this form would need to be filled out, and they would start in this section on page 2. And they would go ahead and click you'd click the appropriate top box as well. Next page, please. And then the last page would be completed with their signature and verification that everything that they're attesting to up above, and yeah, that they're providing proof with their signature that they do meet all the requirements that are needed for debarment. All right. And I'm sorry, we got our pages a little bit out of place, but basically it's just giving us more detailed page 1. There's 2 pages, page 1 and 2. Top page is for debarment. Second page is more towards anti-lobbying. We'll fix that. And as mentioned a few times, the SSPR form would be another requirement for federal funds over $10,000. All right, and now I'm going to turn it back over to Snehal. Snehal, I believe you wanted to talk about the new notification in KFS.
Yes, I did. Thank you. So while this is going to be all new to you all at the department level, I know that there is a lot that we went through, and the video probably went through pretty quick, and you probably didn't capture everything. So please take the time to go back and listen to the video or look at the video again. I know that initially you may actually struggle, and it's okay for you to reach out to us, and we will help you and guide you to be able to do that, and you'll get experts at it over time. Also wanted to let you all know that we are going to introduce a notification in KFS for any purchases that you're going to submit on federal funds. And this notification, some messaging actually is coming right now when we are the PO stage, but we are going to move it up to the requisition stage. So whenever you're submitting a requisition on federal funds, this is the message that's going to show up, that this purchase contains spend that's from one or more federal accounts. So the contract manager or the requester is required to follow the funds checklist and attach the required documentation as we just went through. And then for the competitive bidding requirements, there will be the message about the SSPR form, again, that Shauna just mentioned. And the form actually also has another purpose it serves. It actually has the conflict of interest section at the very bottom that should be checked off and signed off so that we are sure that there is no conflict of interest when you are making purchases using federal funds. So this notification is being programmed right now in KFS. It's going to take a few weeks before it goes into effect. We are hopeful that it will go into effect in September, but please don't wait for the notification to come. You may want to start looking into doing the debarment check right from today after the training. Like I said, initially, if you miss it, we will help guide you through it, but over time, we are hopeful that you all will start doing it on your own. The last slide that we are going to kind of show is the FAQ that I had mentioned in the beginning. So, one of the questions that may pop up is when the message will go out. As I said, it probably is likely to be completed sometime in September, and then the message will pop up. The dollar thresholds, again, I want to re-emphasize that debarment verification requirement is for all federal grants and cooperative agreements over $10,000 and all federal grant contracts over $35,000. So just get that number, those numbers registered in your head, because that's what you will be referencing all the time. With regards to anti-lobby verification, again, the threshold is $100,000 for federal grants and cooperative agreements and $150,000 for federal contracts. So there are some distinctions in between the type of contracts and the thresholds. The Pell card purchase thresholds, yes, the requirements apply to all purchases, whether they are done on Pell card or through a PO. Obviously, there is a hard block on purchases over $10,000 on Pell card. And essentially, the hard block is because of this reason that we do have to comply with a few of the federal uniform guidance requirements. And that's one reason why we have a hard block on purchases on Pell card over $10,000, so that somebody does not purchase something without complying with the uniform guidance requirements. Okay. One other question that will probably pop up is, do we have to perform this verification with contracted suppliers? And the answer is yes. We do have to perform this even for contracted suppliers, whether it's a UCOP contract or a UCI local contract. The reason for that is, let's say we had a contract with a supplier that was signed like 2018 or 19 or 5 years ago. It is very likely that the supplier could have gone from not being debarred to being debarred. And that's the reason why we want that verification to be done at the time of the purchase, so we are 100% sure that the supplier is not debarred, even if it's a contracted supplier. So that's the reason why you had to do it. One other question that's not on this that we probably will add is a question about, what about mixed funding? So if it's a mixed funding, but if the total funding is over $10,000, we still want you to go ahead and go through the federal fund checklist and the debarment verification, because that's what UCOP has decided system-wide, that we are going to treat mixed funding as if it was all federal funding, just in case there were any concerns or issues raised by federal government and their auditors, because it's otherwise very hard to know exactly what was federal funded spend versus non-federal funded spend. And then there will be more in-depth searches to be done to distinguish the two. So the decision was made that we will treat all mixed funding over $10,000 as if they were all federal funded purchases. So those are some of the things that we thought might come up and wanted to give you a heads up on that upfront.
Snehal, one other thing I wanted to mention, and going to question 2 about federal grants versus of federal contracts. One identifier I wanted to point out in case people weren't aware is the account number for federal grants will start with FG and federal contracts will start with FC. And then Helen, I'm sorry, Helen Cheng, I'm blanking on the flow through. I think it was PC or PG.
PC.
PC, yes, for flow through accounts as well. So I meant to put those out as identifiers. But as Snehal said, with mixed funding, you know, for auditors, they're not going to go through and calculate and do all that. So it's better to just use it as a system-wide. If there's any federal funds at all on it, to use the system-wide federal requirements instead. So if I'm saying that right, Snehal, yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that's how actually our team tries to find out whether, you know, the debarment verification is required, and if federal fund checklist is required, is to look at the account number and see if it's an FC, PC, or an FG account. And you know, unfortunately, to be very honest, in the initial stages, in the earlier years when the uniform guidance was introduced, some of our team members actually missed checking for the fund types, and we ended up not having the debarment verification uploaded to the POs, and we actually got in trouble with the auditors because of us not having those documents uploaded to the PO. And when the audits were conducted, they found that as a non-compliance. And right now, the contracts and grants team actually is having a hard time because this audit reports and audit findings actually get published publicly. So that's another reason why we now want to have a two-step verification process rather than things just coming to us and then maybe getting slipped. So by having this change in the process, by having you all to first do it and then us doing the verification of it, hopefully this is like a two-factor authentication where we will not have any misses and will not have any findings from the auditors. So that's also another reason why we feel like this is a better process for UCI to stay in compliance with all the federal requirements. I think those were all the presentation slides we had. I think the next one, yep. So this is a resource slide where you can, you know, click on it once you are provided with this presentation and go through each one of these individually and, you know, get more familiar with anything that you may need. And now we are going to open it up for any questions.
So please feel free to type in your question in the chat box there or raise your hand and unmute yourself when called on.
Helen, you may want to stop the presentation so I can see the tile with everybody. Oh yeah, please fill out the survey. We always encourage you all to take the time to submit a survey so that we know how we are doing, what we can do to make it better, and what are the things that you all are interested in knowing that we can put on the agenda for our upcoming departmental buyer meetings. Okay, what questions can we answer for you?
Jeff, go ahead and unmute yourself, please.
Thank you. Snehal, this is Jeff over in Physical Sciences Purchasing. So just to clarify, this new policy for these checklists and forms only applies to the federally funded grants and flow-throughs for orders 10,000 and more, right? It's not, you know, if I had a $5,000 order, we're not doing all these debarment and form checks. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah, that is based on the information given by ONR auditors to UC Santa Barbara. And we are just going to piggyback off of that information provided to them, that we will also implement this for everything over $10,000.
Okay, because I noticed on the debarment form, and I think that's maybe a UCOP form, it says for federal grants, all purchases. So that could be a little confusing.
Correct.
Are they going to update that form where maybe it says 10,000 and more, or?
Correct.
Or not?
So I actually had gone and asked them if they could update that form. But after kind of giving it more thought, they figured they are better off not changing that, because then that would be not in line with what's in uniform guidance. So documentation wise, to keep our documentation consistent with what is in uniform guidance, they decided not to actually update the form or the document. But so this is more of a verbal understanding between the auditors and the universities.
Okay. Second question, if I could. So we have orders or instances where it may not be an order over $10,000. It's a on-site repair type order or a furniture type order that's under 10,000 that would flow to central purchasing just from the commodity code.
Correct.
How do we treat those? Are we gathering at the department level the department information on that or not?
No, if it's under $10,000, you don't need to do that.
Okay.
But it
But
will
I
still
noticed-
go through, any restricted commodities will still go through central procurement.
Okay, because I noticed on some of the not truly high value in the sense that they're not over 10,000, but say a $5,000 on-site repair order that central purchasing was actually doing some of the debarment forms and on that. So
Yeah.
are you guys still going to do those in central purchasing or?
No, so yeah, so we were doing that just to be on the cautious, on the, as a caution.
Yeah.
But to keep things simple and not to make things worse, we decided that we'll just go to $10,000 and above.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Okay, we had a couple questions come in through the chat. First question is from Stephanie. For the anti-lobby certification, is there a way to check it online with the SAM.gov, or do anti-lobby need to be done through the form?
Snehal, I can respond to that.
Please.
Stephanie, on the federal funds checklist, if you look at the bottom of page 2, there is directions in terms of how to look for anti-lobby in SAM.gov. But basically it says, when you look up the entity, you click on the reps and certs page and you locate one of the FAR codes. If that FAR code is listed, what you want to do is print that page for records. If it doesn't contain that code, then you would have to go with the second option, the second page of the debarment and anti-lobby form, and have the supplier complete that.
Does
Thank
that
you,
answer your
Patrick.
question, Stephanie?
Yes.
Thank
Okay, great. So our next question from Regina, if it's a $10,000 order with just $1,000 on federal funds, do I need an SSPR and debarment?
Yes, that's the mixed funding situation, where even if the federal fund is less than $10,000, the decision has been made system-wide to do the debarment and the SSPR form and treat the entire purchase as if it's a federal purchase. I know that's not ideal. That's just added more work on us. Trust me, we have gone back and tried to have that changed, but the ultimate decision was that we would rather play it safe and not get in any trouble than to get in trouble. So again, being a little more conservative and risk averse, the decision was made to treat that as federal funds for all the dollar amounts.
Okay, so the next question is, are we allowed to, oh, hold on. Will an email be going out to all faculty and staff on these new requirements and procedures?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. So I was thinking of sending out an email to all the ASM, all the assistant deans, and to the MABOs, so all the financial directors from all the schools. We had not thought of sending it out as a SOT mail across the entire campus. I can ask if this is something that we want to do, but that was not at this point intended. I would hope that faculties, if they submit requisitions, that they know what they are expected to do. And this is one thing where we are going to ask the departments and all of you to help spread this word. You can just say, hey, do you guys know that there's more work that's been added to us? Now we have to do this debarment check, and use that as a reason to tell them and explain to them and spread the word amongst your departments so that everybody gets to know this. I know there will be a lot of uproar and a lot of complaints, but that's what it is. So yeah, we will appreciate your help in spreading the word around to the rest of the folks in your schools and departments.
Okay, next question is, are we allowed to inform the supplier on the results or if they're debarred from SAM.gov?
I would say, why not? If they are debarred and we cannot use them, we should let them know that the reason why we cannot use them is because they are debarred. And if they think that, oh, I didn't know that, or why is it, then it's for them to go back and get that rectified. But if they are debarred, then yes, and I see no reason why we can let them know and say that we can't use you guys.
Also, I'll add on top of that, if they're inactive or you just can't find them at all, they do, in order to expedite your order, I would have them fill out that form, as I mentioned, but they should definitely look into what they need to do to get updated in the site or register with the site if they're not in there at all.
Correct.
And another question is, across campus, are fiscal officers the ones who are filling out these forms, or are the department administrators?
So I would expect the department administrators to be doing this. We actually are going to inform the fiscal officers that if they are going to be approving any requisitions that are over $10,000 and have federal funds associated with it, that they should actually make sure that the debarment verification and anti-lobby, if necessary, is uploaded to the requisition. So I would expect them to ask you to do it unless there is an arrangement between you folks in the department where you decide who's going to do it. But that's not for me to decide or for procurement to decide.
Do we have any other questions? Okay, well, that is the end of our training session today. Thank you all for joining. I'm going to turn it over back to Snehal.
Yes, thank you all. Appreciate you all joining. I hope you all cooperate with us and help us with this requirement, and have a wonderful rest of the day. And we will talk to you guys again soon. Thank you again for taking the time to attend the training.